The Galaxy Empire was warned. Entering Terran space means Death Emperor HFY III stood before the massive star map that filled his throne room. The holographic display showed 12,000 star systems, each one marked with the golden symbol of the Zorvathi Empire. His ancestors had conquered these worlds over 10,000 years. They had crushed rebellions, absorbed smaller civilizations, and built the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. But there was one dark spot on the map, one region that remained unmarked, one small cluster of stars that no Zorvathi ship had ever entered and returned from. The ancient charts called it the Forbidden Zone. The old records simply labeled it as Terran territory. Nobody knew what that word meant anymore. Nobody remembered who the Terrans were or what they had done to earn such a warning. HFY did not care about ancient history. He cared about completion. He cared about being the emperor who finally conquered every corner of the galaxy. His name would live forever if he could claim those final stars. His chief advisor, a thin creature named Voroth, stood beside him with worry in his eyes. He had served the imperial family for 300 years. He had seen emperors rise and fall. He had learned to recognize dangerous ambition. "My emperor," Voroth said carefully. "The records warn against entering that space. Every civilization that has tried has lost ships. The Crenari sent a fleet of 50 vessels 4,000 years ago. None returned. The Vellani attempted exploration 2,000 years later. They lost everything they sent. The sector has been marked forbidden by every major power since before our empire existed." HFY waved his clawed hand dismissively. Stories told by weak civilizations to explain their failures. The Crenari and Vellani were primitive compared to us. They had no real military power. We have conquered species that those ancient empires would have feared. He walked closer to the star map and pointed at the dark region. It contained perhaps 200 stars, a tiny fraction of the galaxy. But it bothered him that it existed outside his control. "What do we actually know about this region?" the emperor asked. Voroth consulted his data tablet. "Very little, my emperor. Long-range scans show ordinary star systems, several planets that appear capable of supporting life. But every probe we have sent has stopped transmitting the moment it crossed the boundary. We have detected strange energy readings at the border, but nothing our scientists can explain. And these warnings you speak of?" Voroth hesitated before answering. "There are beacon probes positioned along the entire border of this territory. They have been there for longer than our records go back. They broadcast a message in thousands of languages, including our own. Show me." Voroth touched his tablet, and a recording played through the throne room speakers. The voice was calm and clear, speaking perfect Zorvathi. "This is Terran space. Entry without permission means death. There will be no second warning." HFY laughed. The sound echoed off the high walls of his throne room. His guards shifted nervously. They had never heard their emperor laugh with such contempt. "That is it. A simple threat. No explanation, no diplomacy, just death." He shook his head with amusement. "This sounds like the desperate bluff of a dying civilization. They probably destroyed themselves in some civil war and left these beacons behind to scare away scavengers. The beacons are still active," Voroth pointed out. "Someone maintains them. Someone replaces them when they fail. Our long-range sensors have detected maintenance activity. Then someone still lives there. Good. That means there is someone to conquer." HFY turned to face his advisor directly. "Send scout ships. I want information about what lies beyond that border." Voroth bowed his head. He knew better than to argue with the emperor when his mind was made up. "How many ships, my emperor?" "Start with 5. Fast vessels with good sensors. Tell them to cross the border, scan everything they can, and return immediately. I want to know what we are dealing with." The scout ships launched 3 days later. They were the fastest vessels in the Imperial fleet, designed for reconnaissance and quick escape. Their crews were experienced explorers who had mapped dozens of hostile systems. Throughout the Empire's expansion, they crossed the border at high speed, sensors recording everything around them. None of them ever reported back. The Empire waited for 10 days. Standard protocol was to wait 7 days for overdue scouts, but HFY gave them extra time. He did not want to believe that 5 of his best ships had simply vanished when no word came. He ordered a larger expedition, 20 warships this time, heavily armed and traveling in tight formation. They were instructed to cross the border, locate the scouts or their wreckage, and engage any hostile forces they encountered. The 20 ships entered Terran space together. Silence followed. Imperial listening posts detected nothing. No distress signals, no weapons fire, no emergency beacons. The ships simply stopped existing the moment they crossed that invisible line. Kael'vas refused to accept what was happening. He called his military commanders to the throne room and demanded explanations. His admirals offered theories about unknown weapons, spatial anomalies, and advanced technology. None of them could explain how 25 ships had disappeared without a trace. There must be wreckage, the Emperor insisted. Ships do not simply vanish. Even if they were destroyed instantly, there would be debris. There would be energy signatures. There would be something. Admiral the Tsar, his most experienced military commander, stepped forward. He was old for a Zorvathi. His scales faded to gray, but his mind remained sharp. He had won more battles than any living officer. My Emperor, I believe we are dealing with technology far beyond our understanding. Whatever destroyed those ships did so completely and instantly. This suggests a level of advancement that we have not encountered before. You think these Terrans, whoever they are, possess superior weapons? I think we should proceed with extreme caution. Kael'vas stared at the star map again. The dark region seemed to mock him. 25 ships and hundreds of crew members had vanished into that void. A wise ruler might have accepted the loss and moved on. A careful leader might have studied the problem for years before trying again. But Kael'vas was not wise or careful. He was proud. He was ambitious. He was the Emperor who would complete the conquest of the galaxy, no matter the cost. Prepare an invasion fleet, he commanded. 200 of our finest warships, full crews, maximum weapons, complete supplies for extended operations. We will enter that space in force and discover what happened to our people. Admiral the Tsar kept his expression neutral, but his heart sank. He had served the Empire for 100 years. He had followed orders that he disagreed with many times. But this order felt different. This order felt like doom. My Emperor, perhaps we should attempt communication first. The warning beacon mentions permission. Perhaps there is a way to request entry through diplomatic channels. Diplomacy? Kael'vas snarled. You want me to ask permission to enter space that belongs to the galaxy? You want me to bow before some unknown species that hides behind automated warnings? I am the Emperor of 12,000 worlds. I do not ask. I take. The Tsar bowed his head in submission. As you command, my Emperor. The preparations took 3 months. 200 warships gathered at the border of Terran space. The largest fleet assembled in a generation. Each ship carried a full complement of weapons and soldiers. The crews had been told they were going to claim new territory for the Empire. They had been told that glory awaited them. Admiral the Tsar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. It was the largest vessel in the fleet, a mobile fortress bristling with weapons capable of destroying planets. He had commanded this ship through a dozen campaigns. He had never lost a battle, but as he looked at the dark space ahead of him, he felt something he had not felt in decades: fear. All ships report ready. Admiral, his communications officer announced. The Tsar took a deep breath. He had his orders. The Emperor expected victory. The Empire demanded expansion. He had no choice but to proceed. All ships, maintain formation. We cross the border together. Full sensor coverage, weapons armed, but do not fire unless I give the order. We do not know what we are facing. 200 ships moved forward as one, crossing the invisible line that separated known space from the forbidden zone. Every instrument on every ship went dark. The Tsar gripped his command chair as the bridge plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting red shadows across the faces of his crew. He heard panic in the voices around him as officers reported total system failures. Then, exactly 3 seconds later, everything came back online, that the lights returned. The sensors activated. The weapons systems reported ready. It was as if nothing had happened. Status report, the Tsar demanded. His sensor officer stared at his screen with wide eyes. His hands trembled as he worked the controls. Admiral, you need to see this. The Tsar looked at the main display. and his blood turned cold. They were surrounded. Thousands of ships filled the space around them. Ships that had not been there 3 seconds ago. Ships that had appeared from nowhere while their sensors were blind. Ships of a design he had never seen before. Sleek and elegant and somehow terrifying. The Empire's 200 warships were completely encircled by a fleet that outnumbered them at least 20 to 1. Where did the Galaxy Empire was warned? Entering Terran space means death. Admiral the Tsar had faced death many times in his long career. He had fought in boarding actions where enemies tried to cut him down with blades. He had commanded ships through battles where plasma fire filled the void. He had stared down rebellions and crushed resistance movements without flinching. But he had never felt fear like this. The human woman on his screen looked small by Zorvathi's standards. She had no scales, no claws, no visible natural weapons. Her skin appeared soft and vulnerable. Her body seemed fragile compared to the powerful frames of his crew. Yet something in her eyes made him want to run. "I am Admiral the Tsar of the Zorvathi Imperial Fleet," he announced, forcing his voice to remain steady. "You are interfering with official Imperial military operations. Stand aside or face the consequences." Commander Chen's expression did not change. She showed no anger, no fear, no aggression. She simply looked at him with that strange sadness in her eyes. "Admiral, you have entered Terran space despite clear warnings. You brought 200 warships into our territory without permission. By our laws, this is an act of war. I am required to respond." "Then respond," the Tsar growled. "Attack us if you dare. The Zorvathi Empire does not bow to threats." Chen nodded slowly, as if she had expected this answer. "Before we proceed, I want you to understand something. We have been watching your civilization for a very long time. We have seen your expansion across the galaxy. We know your military capabilities better than you do. We are not threatening you, Admiral. We are giving you information." She touched something off screen, and the main display shifted. Data began scrolling across every monitor on the bridge. Ship specifications, weapon capabilities, crew numbers, personal information about every officer in the fleet. The Tsar saw his own service record appear, his birth date, his family history, his medical information, the names of his children and where they lived. "How is this possible?" His sensor officer whispered. "Our databases are encrypted. Our personal files are classified at the highest levels. Your encryption is primitive by our standards," Chen said calmly. "Your classified files are open to us. Your military networks have been accessible to Terran intelligence. For approximately 3,000 years, we chose not to interfere with your civilization because we hoped you would evolve beyond conquest. We hoped you would learn what we learned." The Tsar slammed his fist against his command chair. "You speak lies to frighten us. No species could have technology thousands of years ahead of the Empire. We are the most advanced civilization in the galaxy." For the first time, something like emotion flickered across Chen's face. It might have been pity. "You believe that because you have never encountered anyone more advanced. The species you conquered were weaker than you. The civilizations you absorbed could not resist your fleets. You assumed that because you were stronger than everyone you met, you must be the strongest of all." She paused. That assumption was incorrect. She touched her screen again, and a holographic projection appeared in the center of the Eternal Dominion's bridge. It showed a timeline of some kind, with markers indicating events across thousands of years. Humanity first developed faster than light travel approximately 12,000 years ago. We expanded into nearby star systems. We encountered other species. We made contact with what you now call the ancient civilizations. The Tsar listened despite his anger. His officers had stopped their work to watch and hear. "Like you, we believed in expansion through force. We built warships. We conquered worlds. We created an empire that made your Zorvathi territories look small." Chen's voice grew heavy. "And then we turned on ourselves." The hologram shifted to show images of destruction. Burning cities, shattered planets, stars being used as weapons. The Tsar had never seen devastation on such a scale. The Terran civil wars lasted for nearly 1,000 years. We killed billions of our own kind. We destroyed hundreds of worlds. We developed weapons capable of erasing stars from existence. By the end, we had nearly wiped ourselves out completely. The bridge had gone completely silent. Even the Tsar found himself unable to speak. The survivors made a choice, Chen continued. We rebuilt our civilization on different principles. We developed technology not for war, but for protection. We created defenses that would ensure no one could ever threaten us again. And we swore that we would never again use our power to dominate others. She looked directly at the Tsar. That is why we established borders. That is why we created warnings. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your resources. We only want to be left alone. And we gave you every opportunity to respect that wish. The Tsar recovered his composure. He could not afford to show weakness in front of his crew. Pretty stories, but stories prove nothing. You have ships surrounding us, but that means nothing without the power to back them up. I have seen your vessels. They are smaller than ours. We outnumber you in terms of firepower, Admiral. Our single smallest patrol vessel carries more destructive capability than your entire fleet combined. We do not build large ships because we do not need them. We do not carry many weapons because one is enough. Chen gestured at the screen. But I do not expect you to believe words. Allow me to demonstrate. Fear finally crept into the Tsar's voice. What do you intend to do? I intend to show you exactly how helpless you are. Not to humiliate you, but to help you understand the truth of your situation. She nodded at someone off screen. We are disabling your weapons now. The Tsar turned to his weapons officer. Fire everything. All batteries, all missiles, attack the nearest enemy vessels. The weapons officer frantically worked his controls. His face went pale. Admiral, nothing is responding. The weapons systems are showing armed and ready, but they will not fire. I cannot activate anything. Try manual override. I am trying. The systems are locked out. Something has taken control of our entire weapons network. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out on every ship. 200 warships found themselves completely defenseless. Their weapons had become useless. Their shields would not activate. Their engines would only maintain position, refusing commands to flee. What is happening? The Tsar demanded. We have assumed control of your fleet's systems, Chen explained. All of them. We did this the moment you crossed the border. We allowed you to believe you still had power because we wanted to give you the chance to leave peacefully. Now you understand that chance was genuine mercy, not weakness. The Tsar felt his world crumbling around him. The Empire's mighty fleet, the pride of 12,000 worlds, had been neutralized without a single shot fired. They had not even known they were being attacked. This is impossible, he said. No technology could do this. Your technology could not do this. Ours can. We have had for 1,000 years to advance, while your civilization was still learning basic space travel. Chen's expression softened slightly. Admiral, I am not trying to destroy you. I am trying to save you. If you return to your emperor and tell him what happened here, perhaps he will understand. Perhaps he will choose peace. The emperor will never accept this humiliation. He will send more ships. He will send the entire Imperial Armada if necessary. We know. And if he does, we will disable those ships as well. We will keep disabling them until your emperor understands that violence cannot succeed against us. Chen leaned forward. But we would prefer to avoid that. We would prefer that you carry a message of peace, rather than forcing us to demonstrate our capabilities again. The Tsar laughed bitterly. You do not know Emperor Kael'vas. He will never accept peace on terms dictated by another species. He would rather destroy the Empire than admit defeat. Then he will have to learn the hard way. But that learning does not have to involve the death of his people. Chen stood. Admiral, I am going to release your ships. Your weapons will remain disabled, but your engines and life support will function normally. You can return to your space. You can report what you have seen. Why would you let us go? We came to invade your territory. We were prepared to kill your people and take your worlds. Because we do not believe in killing when there is an alternative. Because we remember what we once were, and we hope other species can avoid our mistakes. She paused. And because we hope that you, personally, might speak for reason when you face your emperor. The Tsar considered her words. He was a military man, trained for combat, loyal to the Empire. But he was also old enough to recognize when a fight could not be won. What would you have me say to him? Tell him the truth. Tell him that Terran space is not a territory to be conquered, but a neighbor to be respected. Tell him that we offer friendship to those who come in peace. Tell him that we have knowledge and technology that could benefit his civilization. If he is willing to exchange rather than take, he will not listen. Perhaps not, but you will have tried. And when he makes his choice, you will know that you did what you could. Chen touched her screen, and the holographic projection disappeared. The Terran ships began to move, opening a path back toward Imperial space. Go, Admiral. Deliver your message. We will be watching, as we always have, and we will hope that your Emperor is wiser than we fear. The Tsar stood in silence for a long moment. His crew waited for orders. His fleet waited for commands. But he had no words left. He had come to conquer, and he had discovered just how small his mighty ETH galaxy empire was warned. Entering Terran space means Death Admiral the Tsar returned to the Imperial capital with a heavy heart. His fleet arrived in perfect formation, all 200 ships intact, not a single crew member harmed. By any normal measurement, it should have been a successful mission, but the Tsar knew the truth. He had suffered the worst defeat in Imperial history without a shot being fired. Emperor Kael'vas summoned him immediately. The throne room was filled with advisors, generals, and nobles, all eager to hear about the mysterious Terran territory. They expected tales of conquest. They expected news of new worlds claimed for the empire. The Tsar stood before his emperor and told them everything. He described the ships that appeared from nowhere. He explained how the Terrans had disabled every weapon on every vessel without any visible attack. He recounted Commander Chen's words about Terran history, their ancient wars, their decision to isolate themselves. The throne room fell silent as he spoke. Faces that had shown excitement gradually shifted to confusion, then disbelief, then anger. Emperor Kael'vas listened without expression until the Tsar finished his report. Then he leaned forward on his throne, his eyes burning with fury. You expect me to believe that a single species has technology thousands of years ahead of ours? You expect me to accept that my finest fleet was defeated by creatures who look like they could not survive a strong wind? My Emperor, I report only what I witnessed. The Terrans demonstrated capabilities far beyond anything we possess. They took control of our ships as if we were children playing with toys. Then our ships are flawed. Our technology is insufficient. This is a failure of our engineers, not proof of Terran superiority. The Tsar kept his voice steady. My Emperor, I recommend caution. The Terrans offered peace. They offered friendship and exchange of knowledge. Perhaps we should consider their proposal. The Emperor rose from his throne. His guards stepped forward instinctively, responding to his anger. Consider their proposal. Consider bowing to creatures who hide behind warnings and tricks. I am the Emperor of 12,000 worlds. I do not negotiate with species too cowardly to fight. The Tsar bowed his head. As you command, my Emperor, but I must formally advise against further military action. The Terrans showed us mercy. I do not believe they will show it twice. Mercy? Kael'vas laughed with contempt. They showed weakness. They had your fleet at their mercy, and they let you go. A true warrior would have destroyed you. They revealed their nature. They are pacifists. They have powerful technology, but no will to use it. He turned to his military council. We will not make the same mistake. We will mobilize the entire Imperial Armada, 50,000 warships, every battle cruiser, every destroyer, every fighter we possess. We will enter Terran space with such overwhelming force that no tricks or technology will save them. The generals nodded eagerly. They saw glory ahead, promotions and honors for conquering the final frontier. Only the Tsar remained still, his face gray with despair. My Emperor, he tried once more. Please reconsider. The Terrans were not bluffing. I looked into Commander Chen's eyes. She was not afraid of us. She was sad for us. Then she was a fool. And fools die like everyone else. The Emperor waved his hand in dismissal. You are relieved of command, Admiral. Your failure has shamed the fleet. Retire to your estates and pray that your successors bring better news. The Tsar bowed and withdrew. He had done what he could. The rest was beyond his power. As the Imperial military began its massive mobilization, strange things started happening across the galaxy. Ambassadors arrived at every major government capital simultaneously. They were humans, appearing without warning, requesting audiences with heads of state. The Crenary Collective received a visitor who spoke their language perfectly and knew their history better than their own scholars. The Villani Federation met with a human who presented ancient records proving that Terrans had helped their ancestors during a plague centuries ago. The merchant guilds of Tessara heard proposals for trade that would make them richer than they had ever imagined. Every ambassador delivered the same warning. The Zorvathi Empire was about to make a terrible mistake. The other civilizations should not interfere. They should not offer assistance to the Emperor. They should remain neutral and wait for the situation to resolve. Most governments agreed immediately. They had their own ancient records, their own stories passed down through generations. They knew the name Terran. They knew what happened to species that challenged human space. The Crenary ambassador to the Empire tried to warn Emperor Caelvos. He was executed for speaking treason. The Villani offered to mediate between the Empire and the Terrans. The Emperor rejected their offer with insults. Only the merchant guilds tried to provide material support, seeing profit in imperial victory. Their supply convoys were intercepted by ships that appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. No cargo was stolen. No crew was harmed. The ships simply found themselves returned to Tesseran space, with their navigation systems wiped clean. The message was clear. The galaxy would stay out of this conflict. Emperor Caelvos did not care. He had his 50,000 ships. He had millions of soldiers ready to fight. He had the combined might of 12,000 worlds behind him. The mobilization took 6 months. Ships gathered from every corner of the Empire. Veterans of 100 campaigns joined raw recruits eager for glory. The Imperial Armada grew until it filled entire solar systems with its presence. On the day of departure, Emperor Caelvos addressed his forces through a galaxy-wide broadcast. Today we reclaim our destiny. Today we show the galaxy that no species can hide from Imperial might. The Terrans thought their tricks would frighten us. They thought their ancient technology would protect them. They were wrong. Cheers erupted across the fleet. Soldiers raised their weapons in salute. The pride of the Zorvathi Empire prepared to march to war. When we return, we will bring Terran slaves in chains. We will claim their worlds for our colonies. We will add their technology to our own. And every species in the galaxy will remember this day. As the moment the Empire completed its destiny, the Armada moved as one, 50,000 ships heading toward the border of Terran space. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Its firepower could destroy stars. Its armies could conquer worlds in days. At the border, the warning beacons continued their endless broadcast. This is Terran space. Entry without permission means death. There will be no second warning. The Emperor ordered the beacons destroyed. Weapons fire turned them to dust. The fleet crossed the line where the forbidden zone began. This time, the instruments did not go dark. The Terrans did not appear from nowhere. The Armada moved forward without resistance, sensors scanning, weapons ready. For 3 days, they traveled deeper into Terran space. They found empty systems, uninhabited worlds, no sign of the enemy. Confidence grew among the commanders. Perhaps the Terrans had fled. Perhaps their technology was not as advanced as Admiral Thessar had claimed. On the 4th day, they found their first Terran world. It was a beautiful planet, blue and green like the ancient images of lost homeworlds. Cities covered its surface, gleaming structures of elegant design. Ships moved in orbit, civilian vessels going about their business. The Imperial fleet surrounded the planet. 50,000 warships formed a sphere of death around this single world. The Emperor appeared on every screen in the fleet. Send them our terms: unconditional surrender, submission to Imperial rule, or we reduce their planet to ash. A communication channel opened. Commander Chen's face appeared once more. Emperor Caelvos, you were warned. Your admiral told you what he witnessed. Other civilizations begged you to reconsider. Yet here you are, threatening to murder billions of innocent people. Surrender or die. Those are your only choices. Chen shook her head slowly. We tried to show you mercy. We tried to demonstrate our capabilities without violence. You interpreted our restraint as weakness. Your tricks will not work this time. We have learned from the SAR's failure. Our systems are shielded. Our weapons are protected. Whatever you did before will not succeed against this fleet. Emperor, Your systems were never truly shielded. We allowed you to believe they were." She paused. "I am required to give you one final opportunity. Withdraw your fleet. Return to your space. We will forgive this invasion if you leave now." Kael'vas laughed. "You are in no position to make demands. My fleet could vaporize your world in seconds." "Yes, you could. And if you try, you will discover exactly how far behind us you really are." The Emperor's face contorted with rage. "Open fire. Destroy them all. Let this world serve as an example to any who defy the Empire." 50,000 ships activated their weapons. Planet-killing beams charged. Missiles armed. The greatest display of firepower in history prepared to be unleashed. Then, silently, impossibly, something happened. Every weapon on every ship simply ceased to exist. Not disabled. Not deactivated. The weapons themselves vanished. Cannons that had been mounted on hulls were gone, leaving smooth metal behind. Missile bays were empty, with no sign that missiles had ever been stored. The Galaxy Empire was warned. Entering Terran space means death. The Imperial Armada limped home in disgrace. 50,000 ships that had left as conquerors returned as beggars, their weapons gone, their pride shattered. The journey took weeks, and with each passing day, the mood aboard the vessels grew darker. Emperor Kael'vas isolated himself in his private quarters aboard the flagship. He refused to speak with his advisors. He refused to acknowledge the reports flooding in from across the fleet. He sat alone in the darkness, staring at nothing, trying to process what had happened. He had commanded the greatest military force in galactic history. He had threatened to destroy an entire world. And in response, the Terrans had simply made his weapons vanish. Not with counterattacks or clever tactics, but by changing reality itself. How do you fight an enemy that can rewrite the laws of physics? When the fleet finally reached the Imperial capital, crowds lined the orbital stations, expecting to celebrate victory. Instead, they watched in confused silence as unarmed warships docked one by one. Word spread quickly through the population. The Emperor had been defeated. The mighty Empire had been humiliated by creatures no one had ever seen. Kael'vas retreated to his palace and locked himself inside. He ordered the throne room cleared. He dismissed his guards. He sat alone on the throne of his ancestors and tried to understand. Commander Chen's words echoed in his mind. The Terrans could have destroyed everything. They could have ended the Zorvathi species in moments. Instead, they had chosen mercy. They had chosen restraint. Why? For a being raised on conquest and dominance, the concept of voluntary mercy was difficult to grasp. In the Empire, weakness was punished. Enemies were destroyed. The strong ruled and the weak served. These principles had guided Zorvathi civilization for 10,000 years. But the Terrans were not weak. They were the strongest species in the galaxy, perhaps the strongest that had ever existed. And they had chosen not to use that strength for domination. What did that mean? Days passed, then weeks. The Emperor emerged from his isolation a changed being. The fire that had burned in his eyes was gone, replaced by something more thoughtful, something almost humble. He called Admiral the Tsar out of retirement. The old admiral arrived at the palace expecting punishment. He had warned the Emperor. He had spoken against the invasion. In the old empire, that kind of defiance meant death. Instead, the Emperor rose from his throne and bowed his head. "You were right," Kael'vas said quietly. "I should have listened." The Tsar stood frozen, unable to believe what he was hearing. "The Terrans gave me a gift I did not deserve." The Emperor continued. "They showed me what true power looks like. It is not the ability to destroy. It is the ability to destroy and choose not to." He walked to the massive windows that overlooked the capital city. Millions of Zorvathi went about their lives below, unaware of how close they had come to extinction. "I have spent my life pursuing expansion. I believed that the Empire's greatness was measured by the number of worlds we controlled, the species we conquered, the fear we inspired. I was wrong." He turned back to face the Tsar. "The Terrans control nothing outside their own space. They have conquered no one in thousands of years. Yet they are more powerful than all the civilizations in the galaxy combined. How is that possible?" The Tsar considered the question carefully. "Perhaps power is not the same as dominance, my Emperor. Perhaps true strength lies not in what you take, but in what you protect." The Terrans protected themselves by building walls instead of armies. They defended their territory without attacking others. They developed technology for protection rather than conquest. Yes, my Emperor. Kael'vas nodded slowly. And when we threatened them, they did not respond with destruction. They responded by removing our ability to harm them. They made us harmless instead of making us dead. He fell silent for a long moment. I have a choice to make, he finally said. I can spend the rest of my reign trying to find a way to defeat the Terrans. I can pour our resources into weapons research, hoping to eventually match their technology. I can keep the Empire focused on war and conquest until we either succeed or destroy ourselves in the attempt. He paused. Or I can accept what they offered: peace, friendship, the chance to learn from a species that has already walked the path we are on and found a better way. The Tsar held his breath. The future of the Empire hung on these words. I am tired of conquest, Admiral. I am tired of measuring my worth by how many species fear me. The Terrans showed me that there is another way. Perhaps it is time to try it. Over the following months, the Empire began to transform. The massive military-industrial complex that had dominated the economy for thousands of years slowly shifted toward civilian production. Warships were converted to exploration vessels. Weapons factories became technology centers. Emperor Kael'vas sent a message to the border of Terran space. It was not a demand or a threat. It was a request. Commander Chen responded personally. The two beings met on neutral ground, a space station constructed specifically for this moment. Kael'vas came without guards, without weapons, without the symbols of imperial power that he had always carried before. Chen came alone as well, wearing simple gray clothing that had no rank insignia. They talked for 3 days. Kael'vas learned the full history of humanity. He heard about Earth, the original homeworld. He learned about the ancient expansion, the wars between human factions, the terrible weapons that had nearly ended their species. He understood why the Terrans had isolated themselves, why they valued peace so deeply. Chen learned about the Zorvathi. She heard about their own struggles, their rise from a primitive species to galactic dominance, the fears and insecurities that drove their endless expansion. She understood why conquest had seemed necessary, why strength had been valued above all else. When the 3 days ended, they had reached an agreement. The Empire would abandon its expansion. It would release the species it had conquered and allow them to determine their own futures. In exchange, the Terrans would share certain technologies, particularly in medicine and energy production, that would improve life for ordinary Zorvathi citizens. More importantly, the Terrans would establish relations with the galaxy for the first time in millennia. They would emerge from isolation. They would share their wisdom with any species willing to listen. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. The Forbidden Zone was opening. The Terrans were making contact. Everything was about to change. Not everyone welcomed the news. Some imperial nobles had grown wealthy from conquest. Some military commanders had built their entire identities around warfare. They resisted the Emperor's new direction. Some called for rebellion, but the transformation had support where it mattered most. The common citizens of the Empire, those who had provided the soldiers and workers and taxes that made conquest possible, embraced the possibility of peace. They were tired of sending their children to die in distant wars. They were tired of working to build weapons instead of homes. The rebellion faded before it could truly begin. The nobles who opposed change found themselves isolated. The military commanders who resisted were quietly retired. The Empire was becoming something new. Admiral the Tsar, restored to command, oversaw the transition of the military from a conquest force to a defense fleet. Ships that had once attacked weaker species now protected shipping lanes and responded to natural disasters. Soldiers who had trained to kill now trained for rescue and relief operations. It was not an easy transition. Generations of conditioning could not be undone in months. There were setbacks and failures. Some Zorvathi could not accept the new way and left the Empire entirely. But slowly, steadily, progress was made. Commander Chen returned to Terran space with hope in her heart for the first time in years. The galaxy was changing. The species out there were learning. Perhaps humanity would not need to remain isolated forever. She reported to the Terran High Council with her assessment. The Zorvathi Emperor is genuine in his commitment to change. The Empire will need time and guidance, but they are on the right path. I recommend full diplomatic relations and limited technology exchange. The Council deliberated for weeks. They had remained hidden for so long. They had watched so many species destroy themselves through war and greed. They had lost faith in the galaxy's ability to mature, but the Zorvathi had surprised them. When faced with true power, they had not reacted with rage or despair. They had reflected. They had grown. They had chosen to change. Perhaps there was hope for the galaxy after all. The Council approved Chen's recommendation. For the first time in 4,000 years, Terran ambassadors would serve openly in foreign capitals. Terran ships would travel through galactic space. Terran knowledge would be shared with those ready to receive it. A new era was beginning. Emperor Kael'vas stood on the balcony of his palace, looking up at the stars. The same stars that had once represented territories to conquer now represented friends to make, cultures to learn from, wisdom to share. He was still emperor. He still ruled 12,000 worlds. But the meaning of that rule had changed completely. He thought about the warning beacons at the Terran border, still broadcasting their ancient message. Entry without permission means death. Perhaps, he reflected, the warning was not about Terran violence. Perhaps it was about what happened to those who entered as enemies. Their old selves died. Their old believed galaxy empire was warned. Entering Terran space means death. 500 years had passed since the day Emperor Kael'vas had led his armada into Terran space. 500 years since the weapons vanished. 500 years since the galaxy had begun its long transformation. The universe looked very different now. The Zorvathi Empire had become the Zorvathi Republic. The throne that had passed from emperor to emperor for 10,000 years now sat empty in a museum, a reminder of what the species had once been. Elected leaders governed the former empire, representatives chosen by the people rather than born to power. The worlds that had been conquered had been freed. Some chose independence. Others chose to remain allied with the Republic. Some merged together to form new civilizations entirely. The galaxy had become a tapestry of cultures, each developing in its own way, connected by trade and diplomacy rather than force, and at the center of it all stood humanity. The Terrans had emerged from their long isolation carefully, step by step. They had shared knowledge with those ready to receive it. They had guided young civilizations past the dangers that had nearly destroyed humanity itself. They had become teachers and advisors and friends to a galaxy that had once feared them. But they had never forgotten who they were or what they could do. Commander Sarah Chen had retired decades ago. Her role in history secure. She lived on a quiet world at the edge of Terran space. Surrounded by gardens she had planted herself. Her hair had turned white with age, but her eyes still held the same calm wisdom that had faced down the Imperial Armada. 5 centuries before, she received visitors often. Beings from across the galaxy came to learn from her, to hear her stories, to understand the philosophy that had guided humanity through its long journey. Today her visitor was unusual. A young Zorvathi named Kairos had traveled from the Republic specifically to meet her. He was a historian, studying the transformation of his civilization. He wanted to understand how one species had changed the galaxy by refusing to use its power. They sat in Chen's garden, surrounded by flowers from 100 worlds. The air was warm and sweet, carrying scents that Kairos could not identify but found somehow comforting. You were there. Kairos said, you faced Emperor Kael'vas when he brought his armada to destroy your world. Everyone knows the story, but I want to understand what you were thinking, what you were feeling. Chen smiled softly. I was afraid, of course. Anyone who claims they feel no fear in such moments is lying or broken. But my fear was not for myself. What were you afraid of? I was afraid that we would fail, not fail to stop the attack. That was never in question. I was afraid that we would fail to show your emperor another way. I was afraid that despite everything we did, he would never understand. Kairos leaned forward. But you removed his weapons. You demonstrated your power. Was that not enough? Power means nothing without understanding. We could have destroyed that fleet. We could have killed every being aboard those ships. It would have been easy. It would have been safe. and it would have taught nothing. She reached down and touched one of the flowers beside her chair. It was a delicate thing, purple and gold, swaying gently in the breeze. This flower comes from a world that nearly destroyed itself in nuclear war centuries ago. The survivors rebuilt their civilization around gardens like this one. They decided that if they could not learn to cultivate beauty, they did not deserve to survive. She looked up at Kairos. Humanity made a similar choice long ago. After our great wars, we had to decide what kind of species we wanted to be. We could have become conquerors, using our technology to dominate the galaxy. Instead, we chose to become gardeners. But you are still dangerous, Kairos said. Your technology is still far beyond anything else in the galaxy. Your military capabilities are still unmatched. Yes, we remain the deadliest species that has ever existed. We could end civilizations in moments. We could extinguish stars. We could reshape the galaxy according to our will. Chen's expression grew serious. That is exactly why we must be gardeners. Because we have the power to destroy everything. We bear the responsibility to protect everything instead. Kairos considered this for a long moment. My people spent 10,000 years building an empire through conquest. We believed that strength meant domination. When Kael'vas encountered you, he could not understand why you did not use your power as we would have. And now, does your civilization understand? Kairos smiled. We are learning. The Republic is not perfect. We still struggle with old habits and old fears. But we are trying. We are becoming something better than what we were. Chen nodded with satisfaction. That is all anyone can ask. Growth is not a destination. It is a journey. Humanity has been walking this path for thousands of years, and we still have far to go. She stood slowly, her ancient body protesting the movement, and gestured for Kairos to follow her. They walked through the garden together, past trees that touched the sky and pools that reflected clouds drifting overhead. There is something I show all my visitors, Chen said. A reminder of why we do what we do. They came to a clearing at the center of the garden. A single stone monument stood there, covered with names carved in countless languages. Kairos recognized some of the scripts. Others were completely foreign to him. These are the names of every species we have encountered that destroyed itself, Chen explained. Civilizations that built empires and then tore themselves apart. Species that developed technology and used it for mutual annihilation. Cultures that could not learn to live with each other and so chose to die instead. The monument was massive. Thousands of names covered its surface. When your emperor brought his armada to attack us, he came close to adding the Zorvathi name to this stone. If he had been slightly different, if his pride had been slightly stronger, he might have forced us to destroy his fleet to protect our people. But he changed. Kairos said softly. He learned. Yes, and that is why the Zorvathi name is not on this monument. That is why your republic exists. That is why you are standing here today instead of being dust scattered across the void. Chen turned to face him directly. The galaxy warned your people for thousands of years. The warning beacons told you not to enter our space. Other species shared their memories of failed expeditions. Every signal pointed toward destruction. And still your emperor came. He was proud. He was ambitious. He believed nothing could stand against imperial might. He was wrong. But being wrong was not his fatal flaw. His fatal flaw would have been refusing to admit he was wrong. Chen placed her hand on the monument. Every name on this stone represents a species that could not accept truth. They saw evidence of their mistakes and chose denial instead of change. They died because they could not grow. Kairos stood in silence, feeling the weight of those thousands of lost civilizations. Kael'vas saw the truth and accepted it. Chen continued. He changed his entire worldview in response to new information. That is the rarest and most precious quality any being can possess. That is what saved your species. They walked back through the garden as the sun began to set. Colors shifted across the sky, painting the clouds in shades of orange and pink. Kairos felt something changing inside himself, an understanding taking shape that he could not quite put into words. What happens now? He asked. The galaxy has changed so much. The old empires are gone. New civilizations are rising. Where do we go from here? Chen stopped and looked up at the emerging stars. That is the question, is it not? We have spent 500 years rebuilding the galaxy's cultures. We have guided and taught and protected. But eventually, the younger species must find their own way. Eventually, humanity must step back and let the garden grow on its own. Will you return to isolation? Perhaps someday, when the galaxy no longer needs us, when civilizations can resolve their conflicts without our intervention, when the lessons we have taught have truly taken root. She smiled. But that day is not today. There is still work to be done. There are still species on the edge of self-destructs who need guidance. There are still conflicts that require mediation. She turned to face Kairos one final time, and there are still young historians who need to understand the past so they can build a better future. Kairos bowed in the Zorvathi manner of deep respect. Thank you, Commander. I came here seeking knowledge. I think I found something more important. What did you find? Hope for my people. For the galaxy, for what we might all become if we follow the path humanity has shown us. Chen reached out and grasped his shoulder with surprising strength for her age. The warning beacons still float at our borders. They still broadcast their message. Entry without permission means death. But the meaning has changed. How so? Once, it meant we would kill those who threatened us. Now, it means something different. It means that those who enter Terran space with violence in their hearts will find those hearts changed. Their old selves will die and something new will be born. She released his shoulder and stepped back. The galaxy was warned. Entering Terran space means death. The death of hatred. The death of conquest. The death of everything that prevents beings from reaching their true potential. She looked up at the SDA.